Welcome back in, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Sports and Money, Kansas City. We're going through our way through the 2022 off season. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for being with us. Tonight's video was going to be a little bit sloppy because I'm not so much looking at a position group, and we're not looking at the draft, and we're not necessarily laying out a plan or anything like that. My only goal tonight is to take us through what Kansas City has actually done so far during this off season. And I know for a lot of Chiefs fans, if you were to dial it back about a week, the answer to what have the Chiefs done this far in the off season would be nothing, right? But at this point now, they have done quite a few things, and so we're going to talk about that tonight in detail. We'll analyze each of the moves that they actually have made. Just in case you're wondering and you want to kick out, we're covering Juju Smith-Schuster, Andrew Wiley, Chad Henny, Michael Burton, Justin Reed, Josh Gordon, Frank Clark, Travarius Ward, Byron Pringle, and Austin Blythe. Those are the guys we're covering tonight. I'm not going to cover Naughty or Christian. I'm still waiting to get the numbers back on there to analyze those two guys. But those are the guys that we're going to cover in detail. And again, we're not going to cover the draft hardly at all. This is just a off-season update for what Kansas City has done so far and maybe why they made the moves that they did. I'm not going to address why they haven't made all the 36,000 moves that they could have made, because there's always a million different options on the table, but I do want to analyze what they've actually done. Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver. I think we have all watched, at times with all, Smith-Schuster light it up on the scoreboard for the Pittsburgh Steelers. When he first came out as a rookie, just a tremendous receiver, and at times over the years, the past 4 seasons now, has shown that ability time after time. And the Chiefs get him on a 1-year deal for $3.25 million. Tonight's numbers are coming partly from Spot Track and partly from Over the Cap. Love both sites. Highly suggest you go check them both out. 1-year deal for $3.25 million. So basically, Smith-Schuster is coming off a shoulder injury from 2021. He missed most of the season, had to get, I think he actually had shoulder surgery, if I remember right, and had to rehab from that and missed the vast majority of the 2021 season. So what Smith-Schuster is hoping to do is just light it up this year with Patrick Mahomes and company in Kansas City, and then when 2023 offseason hits, he's hoping to light it up in a different way with a very, very large contract, probably, hopefully for him, the biggest that he will ever get. So that's the plan, and that works for Kansas City too. They're getting an absolute steal of a deal here. Listen, I understand that Smith-Schuster missed most of 2021 and had the shoulder injury and may or may not be totally physically 100% ready to go for training camp. I get that. But for the Chiefs to pick him up for 1 year, $3.25 million for 1 season is fantastic. It is an excellent move. It is classic Kansas City. It's the kind of thing, and listen, I get it. Kansas City fans have been dying while apparently all the rest of the AFC West decided to go all in all at once this year. Kansas City fans have just been wilting, waiting for Kansas City to do something significant. And I realize that they haven't made as big a moves as they could have made, in theory, had they gone down a restructuring path or a trading path. They haven't done that. But this is a classic Kansas City move. It's a classic Patriots move. It's a classic move that they've done here to get this guy as their third wide receiver. They still have Kelsey. They still have Tyreek Hill. They still have Mecole Hardman. And oh, by the way, they still have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. And when you have Smith-Schuster there coming in, the pressure isn't on him. It's still going to be on Kelsey and Hill. It's still going to be on Mahomes. He's not coming in with a huge contract where there's a lot of pressure on him. There's no pressure on him other than what he's going to place on himself to get a big deal in 2023. So outstanding move here by the Chiefs. They're not completely strapped of cap options, but it's very tight. There's not a lot of room to maneuver. And you got a guy here who has produced consistently for the Steelers for all of his first 3 seasons leading up to the injury season in 21. So get this guy. I'm still very surprised, and my point was this. I'm very surprised other NFL teams were not willing to offer a good bit more, $6 million, $8 million for a one-year deal. If I had the space, I certainly would have, and it's very surprising to me that Kansas City got this player for 1 year, $3.25 million. Now, it's worth mentioning, very much worth mentioning, that since Juju Smith-Schuster's first season, his rookie year in Pittsburgh, his numbers have gone down every season. Not necessarily his touchdowns or his catches, but what has gone down is his yards per catch and his yards per target. Those numbers have gone down every single season, up to and including the 4 or 5 games he played in 2021. So it's worth mentioning that his numbers have gone down. And I don't have those numbers in front of me or in my head, but you can go look them up on Pro Football Reference if you want to, or ESPN. Both websites just do outstanding statistically. You can go look those numbers up, and you see yards per catch and yards per target have gone down over his 4 seasons with the Steelers. And the question is that because Ben Roethlisberger's arm strength and capability to throw the football has gone down over the years, or is there something there where NFL defenses have figured out how to contain and how to guard Smith-Schuster? Is it one or the other, or is it a mix of both? And I don't know the answer to that. A little later tonight, I'm going to have Simon Short on from the Simon Short podcast. He covers the Steelers and a lot of NFL things, but especially he covers the Steelers. We'll try to work out some kind of an answer to that. Feel free to check it out. I'll have that up on Sports and Money, Pro Football GM, probably tonight or tomorrow, but feel free to check that out. But it's a fair question to ask. With the shoulder injury and with the acknowledgement that Smith-Schuster's yards per catch and yards per target have gone down each season, what version of Smith-Schuster are we going to get? He's still very young, but the important thing is this. No matter what version of Smith-Schuster you get, maybe it's a guy who catches 40 receptions this year and racks up, 500 yards receiving. That would be good. But maybe it's a guy who explodes for 1,000 yards. Whatever you get, at 1 year, $3.25 million, you can't lose. You really can't lose. Even if he's injured and can't play the entire season, what have you spent? You've spent $3.25 million on a 1 year deal, and that's it. So excellent move here by Kansas City. Absolutely love this move. Is it a big splash like some of like Denver's doing and the Raiders are doing and the Chargers are doing? It's not, but this is a very smart move. Just looked at by itself in isolation, this is a very smart move. Guard tackle Andrew Wiley. Wiley started, I think, most of the season at tackle last year, right tackle. You signed him for 1 year, $2.5 million. This is an important move. It's important from this perspective. Wiley has played guard several years now, 2 or 3 years, I forget, for Kansas City, and has done well. Not as good as Trey Smith or Joe Tooney. Those are some exceptionally talented guys. But he has played well, and you understand that Wiley coming in for $2.5 million is so important, even if he just sits on the bench all year, as opposed to having a guy, and I say this all the time, a 4th, a 6th round draft pick, an undrafted rookie free agent, sitting there on the bench, not knowing what they can contribute. You know with Wiley, he can come in and play guard if he has to for the entire season and do a good, solid job at it. It will not be a weak point for the Chiefs' offensive line. Now, what is a bit of a weak point for the Chiefs is if Wiley is back starting at right tackle. And I know you're hoping that, we're all hoping that Lucas Niang can step in and start at right tackle and play very well and really show up, but we haven't seen that yet. And I won't cover the Christian signing tonight, but they got problems there at right tackle. That is a bit of a weakness. I would hope that they can improve there at right tackle, but if that doesn't happen, if Wiley is back starting at right tackle, I will say I have seen worse starting tackles in the NFL. Wiley stepped in, did a decent job at tackle. It wasn't great. It was a bit of a weakness in terms of what all is going on the Chiefs roster, no doubt to that. But at $2.5 million, you're not going to get anybody better, certainly at guard and probably not at tackle. So this is an important signing for the Chiefs. Again, it's not splashy, but this is cheap. It really legitimately adds to your depth at guard or at tackle. Hopefully he's not starting at right guard, at right tackle, but we'll find out. We'll see. Okay, so the Andrew Wiley thing is good. Chad Henny coming back at quarterback, 1 year, $2 million. Me personally, I would really love I would really love to see the Chiefs wait for one of those quarterbacks this year to fall to them in round, I don't know, 4 or 5, and get a mobile guy, somebody who's fast and is either accurate or has a big arm, one or the other. Not somebody you want to start or even ever consider thinking about competing with Patrick Mahomes. I just don't have a lot of faith in Chad Henny in the playoffs. I'm okay with Henny for 3 or 4 games in the regular season, I think. I'm not even sure I'm okay with that now, with knowing how competitive the AFC is and the AFC West. I get it, the price is right, 1 year, $2 million, but I would really love to see the Chiefs have brought in somebody in the draft this year who played prominently in college, showed that he could be very fast and mobile, if nothing else. And I get it. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, if Patrick Mahomes goes down for the year, the Chiefs are kind of toast anyway, right? But you would like to think we could bring in somebody at backup quarterback who offers something in terms of speed, in terms of very accurate arm or a big arm, that at least gives defensive coordinators something to think about if we had a wild card matchup or an AFC championship game to get ready for, and Mahomes wasn't there. And I honestly don't think Chad Henny does that. I really don't. Now, I get it. Now, obviously, Andy Reid must really like keeping him there at backup. Me personally, I would have parted ways a couple of seasons ago, but again, it's $2 million. Price-wise, who cares? It's not going to hurt you. Michael Burton at fullback. This is one of those small things, tiny things. This is a classic Patriots-Chiefs thing. I like Michael Burton at fullback. Okay, you bring him on for 1 year, $1.2 million. He's going to block like crazy. He might catch a couple of passes. He might run the ball a handful of times, but he's there to block. He's the fullback. Maybe he gets 200, 250 snaps this year. It just gives the Chiefs something else to work with. We know what kind of offense they want to run. They want to run the high-flying, deep pass offense that they were unable to run last year. And if they are unable to do it again this year, no matter what you think the reason is, a lot of people think it's too high safety. I personally think it's a domino effect from the tackles, struggles at left and right tackle. But no matter what you think, if the Chiefs cannot run the kind of offense that they ran in 2020 and 19 and 18, in which they are just bombing all over the place, if they can't do that, having a guy like Michael Burton there at fullback to run a different kind of offense, the kind of offense that they had to adjust into in 2021, even if he's just playing 250 snaps, it's a good move. It's another tool in the box, and there he is at $1.2 million, cap hit, hardly anything at all. Let's talk about Josh Gordon. Okay, I recommended letting him go. I forget how many snaps he had last year, 200 snaps, 250, I don't remember. They hardly ever threw the football to him. Apparently they think he's still got more in the tank. And at $895,000 for 1 year, they got nothing to lose, okay? We've all seen, and it's been a long time. It has been a long time since we've seen Josh Gordon perform week in and week out. I think he's missed 2 NFL seasons completely out of his career. It's been a while since we've seen him perform week in and week out at a high level. And he didn't do it last year for Kansas City. But we've seen that Josh Gordon, at his best, is better than a whole lot of wide receivers that are out there in the NFL. So we'll see. Obviously, the Chiefs thought he was worth bringing back. That's very interesting to me. We'll see how he does. But at $895,000, you got nothing to lose. Here's a big wide receiver. If Patrick Mahomes can develop some trust with him, and he can begin to develop in that offense, maybe they do something there. That's at 1 year, $895,000. Let's talk about 2 of the big ones, okay? And these are interesting to me. Justin Reed coming in at safety, comes in from the Houston Texans. Again, not a huge splashy deal. There are reasons I really like this move, and there are reasons that give you something to stop and think about, okay? So first of all, the money. It's a 3-year deal, $31.5 million. Excuse me. The average annual value on this, the AAV, is about $10.5 million. I think it's $10.5 million a season. That's his cap hit. But that's a little tricky, and that's one reason I love to wait until these contract specs come out. And again, you can get them on Spot Track, you can get them on Over the Cap. They both do an outstanding job, fantastic job. His actual cap hit for 21, this is Justin Reed from Houston. His cap hit will be $4.6 million, minuscule. If you have a starting safety, a guy who's an average solid starting safety or better at 4.6, you have a good deal. Steps up a lot in 22. They'll be paying him $12.7 million. That's probably a little bit bigger cap hit than what his position and his talent level would demand. It's still not brutal. If he can perform, and we'll talk about what he can and can't do here in a minute, if he can perform at a solid level at safety for the Chiefs in that spot week in and week out, then 12.7 isn't a horrible number. And then in 2023, his cap number steps up to 14.3, which again is too large, but here's the beauty of it. Dead cap in 2023 is only $3.5 million. So I know that's a lot of numbers. That's a lot of blah, blah, blah. But if the Chiefs decide before 2023 gets here, if they decide, I'm sorry, I've got my numbers switched up. 21 is already gone, so this is 22, 23, and 24, okay? If in 2024 the Chiefs decide he's not working out, he's not worth the money, they can let him go for $3.5 million dead cap hit, and they can save about $9.5 million in cap space, something like that, okay? $10 million, something like that. So they don't have to keep him. So basically what that means is 2-year deal. First year it's $4.5 million, 4.6. Second year it's about 12.7, which is significant but not brutal. And then in third year, if you want to, if you decide it's just not working out, we can get out from under this for a dead cap of only $3.5 million. So financially, I'm okay with the deal. It's not a great deal financially. It's not a steal. You're not getting any great value here. I cannot say that strongly enough. There is no great value here, but if Justin Reed can step in and play that safety position from a solid level, then you're okay with it because he's filling in a spot that you don't have, and you're losing Tyrann Mathieu from that spot. Now, let's talk about what Justin Reed can and can't do, okay? Justin Reed can get you interceptions. On average, about 2 a year, 2 or 3. He's a center fielder, kind of a safety. That's what he is. He is not going to play very much one-on-one football with wide receivers and running backs and stuff like that. He does not have, we'll get into what he can do, he does not have the flexibility, the hip speed, the ability to turn his hips, the ability to cover one-on-one at the NFL level. He just doesn't have that. He's explosive, he's powerful, he's good in the box. If you want to put him in the box against the run game, he'll be just fine there. From a safety coming in, when a cornerback is already guarding a wide receiver and he's good at Reed is good at tracking the football and either intercepting it or breaking that pass up, he's good at that. He's not incredibly good at it. He can't go sideline to sideline. He's not that amazing. But if you give him a half or 2/3 of the field, he can patrol that very well. And balls that are overthrown typically or underthrown, he is pretty good at spotting those and getting a couple of interceptions on those a year. But you will not see him, and if you do, it's going to be a problem. If you see him in one-on-one coverage with anybody other than, say, a bigger, slower wide receiver, any of the fast NFL wide receivers, the slot guys, the faster wideouts, the running backs who can catch balls out of the backfield, forget about it. He does not have this as part of his repertoire. He cannot cover these people one-on-one. And Tyrann Mathieu could. Okay, that's the difference. Justin Reed will be just as good in the box as Tyrann Mathieu was. Justin Reed will be a decent center fielder compared to Tyrann Mathieu, not as good as Mathieu. But what he cannot do that Mathieu could do, Tyrann Mathieu could guard anybody. Some guys better than others, but Tyrann Mathieu was an excellent, excellent cover guy at safety. Not a dominant cover guy, not a shutdown cover guy, but an above average cover guy. And Justin Reed just isn't, and he never will be. Okay, that's just not his skill set. And I don't think the Chiefs are expecting that to be. I think they understand that what they have back there at safety, and this is why you get him at $10 million AAV versus Tyrann Mathieu's 18, 19, 20 AAV for the past couple of seasons, is because he cannot cover, but he can be explosive, he can tackle, he can come in and break up passes that he spots that are going to a receiver somewhere who is already being guarded by somebody else. So he's a very good safety back there in that center fielder role. He will get you a couple of interceptions, he will get you some passes broken up, and he can come down and shut down the running game out there in the flat. He's quick enough to do that. He's explosive enough to do that, and he's smart enough to do that. Okay, so you got a good, smart player, high energy. Love Justin Reed. Love the explosiveness. Love the physicality. I really haven't even mentioned that. When I say explosive, very physical. You're really going to enjoy some of the big plays that I think he's going to make. And as long as the Chiefs keep him in that role, this is so important. If the Chiefs keep him in that role of center fielder and a guy who comes into the box to explode in the running game and to try to shut down the running game, he will excel. He will do very well, and you'll probably get what you're paying for him over these next couple of seasons. If they try to put him in one-on-one matchups where he's guarding any kind of wide receiver in space, that is not going to work. Tyrann Mathieu could do that. A lot of safeties can't, and Justin Reed is one of the guys who can't. The interesting thing about this, the interesting thing is Juan Thornhill is also not great in one-on-one coverage. He's solid. He's better than Reed. Juan Thornhill is better than a number of average safeties in the NFL at covering one-on-one. But basically, you've got two guys back there at safety that you would probably rather not have in one-on-one coverage. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that this is the kind of defense that the Chiefs are building at the moment. With Reed and Thornhill back there as your two safeties, neither one of them is going to be particularly good at guarding one-on-one. And I know safeties don't always have to do that. But in today's NFL, where a lot of times you have the linebackers playing some kind of underneath the zone, and you have a lot of times the safeties and the defensive backs having to play one-on-one, depending on what kind of an offense is thrown out there, it does happen. So don't expect Thornhill and Reed to just be dropping into one-on-one coverage. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully the Chiefs are designing a defense that keeps them in that more traditional, old-fashioned safety role, and not so much in that modern having to cover one-on-one safety role like you see in a lot of zones. Okay, so that's just something to keep an eye on. The Chiefs at the moment only have two cover guys in that defensive backfield. They've got L'Jarius Sneed, who is decent in coverage but not great. I even personally recommended bumping him to safety because he was better in coverage than an average safety, but that's clearly not going to happen now. He's going to be staying probably in that slot role more than likely. And that leaves them with Rashad Fenton, who can guard almost anybody in the NFL and do a pretty solid job of it. But they still need another cover guy. You lost Mathieu. You lost Charvarius Ward. You lost both of those guys. Good, solid cover guys, both of them. Above average cover guys. So now if you're the Chiefs, you need at least one more guy, probably two. It's pointing more and more to the idea that the Chiefs may be using a very high draft pick at cornerback this year. We've seen a number of mocks mock them as a cornerback even before all of these moves. That looks more and more likely now. I'm not going to dive into that too much here today, but that certainly does look likely that the Chiefs are going to use a very high draft pick on a cornerback here and might even do 2 draft picks. They must obviously, I think they're seeing people in the draft that they like. So don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Don't be surprised if they don't use that first-round draft pick on a really legit cover corner in the first round, and then also dip back in the 4th or the 5th round and just get a very quick kind of a slot cornerback, because they really still need 2 guys to cover for today's NFL. And we'll see if that actually happens or not, but that's what I'm looking at, okay? The other big move, Frank Clark. This one is fascinating to me. Frank Clark. I said that I was going to be shocked if Frank Clark was still on the roster this offseason heading into 2022. And here he is, and I'm shocked, but I like it, and here's why. Frank Clark was set to make $26.1 million, something like that, in 2022. That's in the top 5 of all defensive players in the NFL at that time. That may have changed a little bit. Top 5, not at his position, top 5 of all the defensive players in the NFL. That's where he was going to be paid. And he himself, talent-wise, is somewhere in the top 40 or 50 defensive ends in the NFL. That's about where he's at. And I know the myth of Frank Clark lives on in the writings and legends of writers in the Kansas City area about how he always jumps up and plays so well in the playoffs. But I encourage you to go back and watch some of those videos. Some of those postseason sacks have come when the Chiefs were up by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And some of them have just come off of twists and stunts that the offensive line failed to pick up. And some of them have come off of Chris Jones chasing the quarterback off into Frank Clark's area. Okay, so all of that notwithstanding, Frank Clark at the end of the day, to me, is a good, solid defensive end, but not worth $26.1 million. Really not even worth half of that. But here's where this is important. The dead cap hit to let him go was somewhere around $13 million. I'm not going to quibble over $100,000 or $500,000. Who cares when you're talking about $27 million or $26 million, all right? Insignificant. Somewhere around $13 million dead cap hit to let him go, which means if they had just straight up cut him, as I expected them to do, they would have saved about $13 million, and they would have had $13 million on the books as a dead cap hit this year for a player who wasn't even there anymore. And that was the move I expected them to make. Now, what they did instead, they went to Frank Clark and to his agent, and they said, hey, we're going to cut you anyway. Would you like to just stay here at Kansas City and play for roughly $13.7 million? And again, I don't remember the exact number. It's insignificant. Most NFL players, when they're slated to make $26 million and you offer them a pay cut to where they are now going to be making somewhere around $13.7 million, most NFL players are going to say, forget it. They're going to get their feelings hurt. They're going to be very angry. They're going to say, fine, just release me. I'll go sign with some other team, even if it's for less money than that 13 to 13.7. I will play somewhere else, and I will vow to get my revenge on you, and I will hate you for the rest of my life. Frank Clark didn't do that. He and his agent, and I give them a lot of credit on this, Frank Clark didn't do that. Frank Clark and his agent looked at the market and I think saw that they were not going to be able to approach $13.5 million this year in 2022. And I think they said, you know what, we'll just stay and play. And if that's what happened, and that's about what happened, I admire Frank Clark for doing that, for seeing business-wise what was going to be best for him. He took a heck of a pay cut, but he was going to take it anyway. He had no choice here but take a pay cut. His only choice was, did he play in Kansas City for $13.7 million, or did he go play somewhere else this year and probably play for a good bit less? I don't know exactly what the market on Frank Clark would have been. Me personally, I think it probably would have been around $8 or $9 million for a season. I don't know that. You never know exactly what other teams are going to pay. Some of them are desperate and stupid, and I can't predict that. But I think that's what would have happened. No matter what, though, this was a great move for Kansas City, because instead of having $13.7 million on their books this year for a player who wasn't there any longer, now you've got $13.7 million on the books this year, and you've got the player. And you don't have a major hole there at defensive end. Now, listen, Frank Clark, he's not going to get the quarterback a whole lot. He's not going to rack up, double-digit sacks more than likely. That's not going to happen. But he's a good, solid defensive end, get into the quarterback. and getting in the run game. Good, solid, hard worker, celebrates everything, everybody. The Chiefs are better off having him on the team because it was going to cost them the same amount whether they cut him or whether he took the pay cut. So now they get to keep him for the same price it would have been if they'd have cut him. So perfect deal for Kansas City, smart deal for Frank Clark. He's still young enough to where when he gets on the free agent next offseason, and he's scheduled to make, like, I think, north of $30 million next offseason with a $9 million dead cap hit. There's always the chance, I don't know, there's always a chance Kansas City may come to him next offseason and say, hey, would you play for us for $9, 10, or $11 million? If not, we're going to cut you for $21 million cap savings and a $9 million dead cap hit. But if he wants to, he could go into free agency next offseason if the Chiefs cut him in 2023, and he could still have another chance at a pretty decent 2 or 3 year deal because there are teams out there who need a good, solid defensive end, and that's exactly what Frank Clark is. So a lot of credit here to Kansas City for being able to pull this off, but more credit goes to Frank Clark for just making a good business deal for him instead of making a very emotional, bitter business deal that other NFL players make. We've seen it happen before, and Frank Clark here, I think, did the right thing for him, and I think he will come out the better for this financially, not only this offseason, but next offseason. So major props here. I did not expect that to happen, but that's exactly what happened, and I love that. All right, 3 guys that are gone for sure. Charvarius Ward is gone. I have to say something here. I love Charvarius Ward. I think if I remember right, he was either drafted very low or he was an undrafted rookie free agent. I am 99% sure he was an undrafted rookie free agent who signed on with the Cowboys, and then the Chiefs traded for him, I think, either very early on in his career or right before he even played for the Cowboys. I don't remember which it was. But Ward has come a very long way. Ward has proven himself for multiple seasons now as a good, solid cover guy. He can cover the big guys, he can cover the fast guys, he can cover the good ones, he can cover the not so good ones. He is not a shutdown corner. I hope the 49ers do not try to force him into a role where he's expected to shut people down every week. That's not him, but he is a corner who can make everybody work. Quarterbacks have to think about what Ward is doing. Ward is much better in one-on-one coverage than he is in zone. He just feels better. He likes the challenge. You can see it in his body language. He looks more clear, and he looks a little bit more confused in zone. He looks very clear-minded when he's playing one-on-one. If the 49ers use him that way, if they use him in the right way, I think they're going to be very happy with what they got. Now, he was outpriced for Kansas City. This was the right move for Kansas City to let him go. He gets a 3-year, $40.5 million deal for the 49ers, but I am very happy for Charvarius Ward. Congratulations to him. He has come a very, very long way. We're used to seeing guys get a lot of money on the top end who've had talent. They were drafted somewhere in the first 3 rounds. They've played all the way through that rookie deal, and then, of course, they make their money. We don't see as many guys like this come from, I think, undrafted rookie free agent status, play all the way through for pretty small money. He was playing on restricted free agency contracts for a couple of seasons, and he finally gets a big deal here, 3 years, $40.5 million for the 49ers. Congratulations to Charvarius Ward. Very, very excited for him. Byron Pringle, also excited for him. I said if the Chiefs could get him back for $2.1 million or something close there, I'd do it, but I didn't think that would happen. He gets a deal with the Bears for 1 year, $6 million. Good deal there. And then Austin Blythe heading to the Seahawks. Didn't play for the Chiefs. Nice to have him there at backup center, but the Chiefs can find somebody else cheap to play backup center for sure if they need to. He gets a 1 year, $4 million deal with the Seahawks. So that's everything we've covered so far. Again, we'll have more videos where we cover things here in the future. Thank you so much for listening. If my sister Rachel is watching, thank you very much for watching, Rachel. Hey to my mom. She likes to watch a lot of these videos here lately. Thank you for Mom to checking them out. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see y'all next time. Have a great one. Bye.